Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Kunja Vihari. Okidana Galava Girivardhani. Okidana Galava Girivardhani. Yashodanandana Brajajana Anjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Anjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Jayam Vishnupa Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Shatya Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupa Paramahansa Parivrajikacharya Stotra Shatya Shri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Lantikari Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jani Tagore Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. So, reading from Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, chapter entitled Swami Invites the Hippies. Wild elements were there, of course, people whose minds and intentions were far away in some chemically induced fantasy. Yet the mood was dominated by Srila Prabhupada's followers, who danced with arms upraised and watched their leader carefully. Although in many ways they were still like hippies, they were Swamiji's disciples, and they wanted to please him and follow his instructions. They wanted to attain Krishna consciousness. For all the varied punctuation of horns and timpani, the kirtan remained sweet. Hayagriva even played his cornet in tune, and only during every other mantra. Srila Prabhupada knew that some aspects of the kirtan were wrong or below standard, but he accepted the offering, and not awkwardly, but lovingly. He simply wanted these American boys and girls to chant. That they dressed irregularly, jumped too savagely, or had the wrong philosophy did not over concern him. These boys and girls were chanting Hare Krishna, so at least for the present, they were pure. The hippies knew that too, and they loved it. Just as in Janaki's dream, Srila Prabhupada's pleasure was to see the whole world engaged in kirtan. Somehow or other, he would say, people should be engaged in Krishna consciousness. And this was the instruction of Lord Chaitanya's chief follower, Rupa Goswami, who had written, Tasmat kenap upayena mana Krishna niveshayet. Somehow or other, fix the mind on Krishna. The rules and regulations can come later. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're up to the fourth canto on the Bhagavatam. Chapter number 29, talks between Narada and King Prachinabharhi. And we are doing text number 33. Yatahi Purusho Barang Shirasa Gurum Udvahan Tang Skandena Sa Adhate Tata Sarva Pratikriyaha Yatahi Purusho Barang Shirasa Gurum Udvahan Tang Skandena Sa Adhate Tata Sarva Pratikriyaha Yatahi Purusho Barang Shirasa Gurum Udvahan Tam skandena sa adhate tata sarva pratikriyaha. Word for word. Yata, as, he, certainly, purusha, a man, bharam, a burden, shirasa, on the head, gurum, heavy, udvahan, carrying, tam, that, skandhena, on the shoulder, sa, he, adhate, puts, tata, similarly, sarva, all, pratikriyaha, counteractions. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. A man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another. Purport. This is a good description of an attempt to transfer a burden from one place to another. When one gets tired of keeping a burden on his head, he will place it on his shoulder. This does not mean that he has become freed from the strains of carrying the burden. Similarly, human society, in the name of civilization, is creating one kind of trouble to avoid another kind of trouble. In contemporary civilization, we see that there are many automobiles manufactured to carry us swiftly from one place to another. But at the same time, we have created other problems. We have to construct so many roads, and yet these roads are insufficient to cope with automobile congestion and traffic jams. There are also the problems of air pollution and fuel shortage. The conclusion is that the processes we manufacture to counteract or minimize our distresses do not actually put an end to our pains. It is all simply illusion. We simply place the burden from the head to the shoulder. The only real way we can minimize our problems is to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead and give ourselves up to His protection. The Lord, being all-powerful, can make arrangements to mitigate our painful life in material existence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chaksham Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. A man may carry a burden on his head, and when he feels it to be too heavy, he sometimes gives relief to his head by putting the burden on his shoulder. In this way, he tries to relieve himself of the burden. However, whatever process he devises to counteract the burden does nothing more than put the same burden from one place to another. So this verse, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, is a very nice verse. It's just a simple analogy we can relate to. If we're carrying something heavy on our head, then we're like, man, this is annoying. Let me put it somewhere else because I've still got to carry it to where I'm going. Maybe I'll put it in my left arm. Now my left arm's tired, I'll put it in the right, but the burden's still there. So good morning. Thanks everyone for joining us here. So this purport today, Prabhupada's giving the example of cars. So this is a nice example we can all relate to. I'm pretty sure most of us here on this Zoom call will have a car, and if not, we've definitely ridden in one, or the public transport, the buses, etc. So they're part of modern civilization. They've basically replaced the horse. The horse used to be the mode of transport, and now it's become the car. So there's a few things that I've heard about cars. So Prabhupada mentions some of these points in the purports of the inconveniences of cars. So one thing that I heard that was very interesting as to the original reason why cars were created. The idea is that this invention, the car, they would help reduce accidents and reduce air pollution. So you're thinking, cars reducing accidents and reducing air pollution. That's interesting. So, because the problem was with horses, sometimes the horse would kick you. And so that's considered an accident. You get injured, you know, the horse kicks you when you're trying to get on, or the horse kicks someone else that it doesn't like. So it caused accidents. And similarly, the horses also caused air pollution. They would pass still in the middle of the road where they're walking along. And, you know, it looks bad and it smells bad. So this is air pollution. So cars were originally designed to try to solve these two problems. But as we know, the wonderful cars, they've solved the accident problem, right? Not really. They've made them much worse. Instead of having a horse kick you and maybe like breaking an arm, or maybe not even that, maybe just feeling a bit embarrassed and have a bit of dirt on your clothes. Instead, now you jump in a car and you either get severely injured or you die. So that's a good solution to the accident problem, the car. Second, air pollution. Cars don't poo. So we've solved the air pollution problem, right? Well, not really. With these improvements to the cars, making them go faster and have bigger engines and stuff so they can carry more, well, then we've just increased the air pollution. In some places, it's so bad, like Delhi. If you stay in the city of Delhi for a day, then it's basically the equivalent of smoking a whole pack of cigarettes. And myself, just going there, because I'm not there for very long, you arrive in the airport and you just want to get out of there and go to the Dham. Um, Even just jumping on a rickshaw and being in that vicinity, actually, even in Matura, it affects me as well. It's just like the pollution there is so like not nice that I get like my eyes get a bit red and puffy. So this is the wonders of modern civilization. We create these wonderful things called cars, and they solve all our problems. Not really, they make the problems worse. So that's a little bit more on cars. And then, as Prabhupada mentions in the fifth canto, first chapter, first text purport, travel time. It's another wonderful thing that cars have solved. They've solved our travel time. It only takes us, from where I'm living at the moment, 25 minutes to get to the temple. So that's pretty good, right? 25-minute drive. So there's a few things to be said about that. One is that in previous ages, maybe just a couple hundred years ago, you used to live closer to the places that you were going. So you don't have to travel so far, so it didn't take you so long. So we may now live a 25-minute car drive away, but previously we'd maybe live a 20-minute horse ride away. So we'd actually be closer and it would take less time. So Prabhupada mentions in this purport to the first chapter of in the first text of the fifth canto, how now to go to work, it can take 1 to 2 hours. And then on the way home, it may take even longer, 2 to 3 hours, because there's just so much traffic and congestion. This is what it's like in busy cities. Maybe it's not as bad here in Auckland, but still, I spoke to one gentleman the other day, and he said how he used to live in, where was it? Somewhere out in West Auckland. Can't remember exactly where, and he works in South Auckland. So he said it used to take him, oh, I remember now, it was where they have the Sunday markets. What's it called again? Avondale. He used to live in Avondale. So it used to take him roughly an hour to get to work, sometimes an hour and a half, and similarly that time to get home because of the traffic. But now it only takes him like 20 minutes because he lives much closer. But yeah, in these bigger cities, it can take you 2 or 3 hours. That's a lot of time. That's so much of your life. It's quite intense. And then His Holiness Ramayaswamy mentioned a recent example. He said that how to get from some town, I can't remember which town, to Sydney, it used to take half an hour by horse. This was in the early 1900s. It would take half an hour by horse. Now, with progress in the 2000s, at the turn of the century, it takes 1 hour by car. So we've made progress. So in other words, cars aren't the awesome solution we thought they would be. And this is just one example of so many examples in material existence. So this is the point Prabhupada is making. So Prabhupada concludes by saying that the processes we use to counteract our distresses simply move the problem from one place to another. Just like the example of the burden being moved from one shoulder to another. Now, Prahlad Maharaj, this is, you could say, where Prabhupada's getting this from. I mean, it's mentioned in this text here today, but this other one that I'm about to mention is a very famous one. So it's from 7th canto, 9th chapter, text 17. Prahlad Maharaj, he says, essentially that any remedies we accept to counteract our miseries are more troublesome than the miseries themselves. So it's like you're taking, this is a good example of modern civilization, isn't it? It's like you take a pill to solve some problem. Maybe you've got a digestion issue. So you take a pill and it, settles your stomach. But then you get like some massive skin rash or something, and then you're itching like crazy. So that's what basically Prahlad Maharaj is saying. You try to counteract one misery by using a remedy, but then the remedy causes you more problems than the original problem itself. And I also heard a nice example given recently by His Holiness Dave Amrita Swami, and he's quoting one of the previous acharyas, possibly Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So the pain of being a nobody, or infamous. You just no one knows who you are. You just like no one cares for you. It's like, get out of my way. I'm busy. I'm going somewhere. Who are you? Get out of my way. So this can often be painful. We were disrespected. But if you're famous, then people will now respect you and appreciate you, and they won't push you out of their way, and they won't trample on you and ignore you and like that, and they'll give you respect. So this, as one Acharya, he explains, if you become famous, then it's like accepting a jeweled umbrella. So it may be raining, and now you have this wonderful jeweled umbrella. So that rain is no longer hitting you. That rain is compared to disrespect. So this jeweled umbrella, this fame that you've now got, it gives you relief from the disrespect, this rain. But to carry this jeweled umbrella, it's not an ordinary, like flimsy, blow over in the wind, snap in half, and it's gone forever umbrella, but it's a solid, like heavy gold jeweled umbrella. It's very heavy and sturdy. So it'll protect you from the rain. But the problem is it's real heavy. It's difficult to carry. So you're no longer wet, but your arms are aching like anything, and you find it very tiring to uphold this umbrella. So similarly, it's explained that any material opulence in this world becomes a burden. So you may have that fame, but to maintain it, it's really intense. It's a lot of hard work. So it may relieve us from one pain, but then it comes along with its own pains and anxieties. And as Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to 7.9.17, the Bhagavatam, material opulence may be somewhat pleasing for the time being, but to come to that temporary pleasing condition, one must work extremely hard. So for most of the people, the words extremely hard work are the last thing we want to hear. So we're thinking, okay, how can I get rid of these miseries and not have to work extremely hard? So Srila Prabhupada says in that same purport, he says the solution. The only real way we can minimize our problems is to become Krishna conscious. In other words, give the problems to Krishna. As Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Savaraman parityaja mamikam sharanam raja. Just give up all your solutions to these problems and just accept my solution, and then you'll have no more problems. And Krishna says the same thing in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Hesha Gunamai Mamamaya Duraya. So yeah, this material energy, it's difficult to overcome. It's just the problems are just too intense. But if you become Krishna conscious, then you can easily overcome them. So in the final line of the purport, Prabhupada mentions that the Lord can make arrangements to mitigate our painful life. So if we surrender to Krishna, then Krishna will make the arrangements. So we might not know exactly how that's going to transpire. And this is one plug for journaling. I mean, some of us have a good enough memory. We can remember what we've been through in life, and we can remember the difficulties and what we went through and how it actually ended up being good in the end. But sometimes we may forget them. And so, yeah, some suggest that on a more daily basis, we are also experiencing smaller problems, maybe not as major as certain life quakes, big shakeups in our life, that we remember those ones because they're massive and they don't happen as often, but smaller ones. Actually, it's the same thing happening day to day. We're getting smaller packages of misery day to day, and there's a reason behind that. And Krishna's trying to teach us something. So sometimes just keeping a journal can like help us keep track of things like why something happened, and we can see the solution. So that's one way we can try to see Krishna's hand in things. Of course, if we just have that mindset in our day-to-day life, then that's even better. Then any problems that come up, oh, it's a problem. Krishna's trying to tell me something. He's trying to teach me something. So therefore, it's not a problem. It's a lesson. It's a lesson to be learned. And if we see problems, not as problems, but as lessons, then it's not an issue because you're learning, and learning is a good thing. So Krishna, or rather, as Lord Kapila Dev, he explains in his teachings to his mother that the devotees do not suffer material miseries because they absorb their consciousness in Krishna. So this is a very nice point. Like we can focus on our body, or we could focus on our mind, or we can focus on someone else. Particularly, the best person to focus on is Krishna. And if we're always focused on Krishna, then even though the body and mind may be having their issues, because that's not where our focus is, it's not such an issue. But if we're fully absorbed in the body and then the body has a pain, then we're going to be fully absorbed in that pain. So that's why it's explained that the more we try and enjoy material happiness and become absorbed in it, then the more we will experience the pains, the sufferings of the body, because we've become absorbed in the body. So the more we become absorbed in Krishna, the less we feel the pains of the material body. And not only that, we will feel more happy because Krishna is permanently blissful. So if we're constantly trying to absorb our consciousness in something or someone, Krishna, who is permanently blissful, then naturally we will also become more blissful. So just some examples of this. I've given some pretty extreme examples here, but I guess sometimes intense examples can help illustrate the point, is that Srila Prabhupada, he was cool, calm, and collected, and wasn't really kicking up too much of a fuss when he was basically almost dead. He's translating the 10th canto, and he's giving purports. And his body basically is just, as he said, his body's just a bag of bones, and there's just no end to the pain that it's giving him. He's got no muscle left. Like it's just, yeah. Outside of him translating, I've read some discussions recently of his conversations when he was in that situation, and he's just very, clearly saying what's happening. But the whole time, do you hear him crying, screaming, whinging? He's just pretty transcendental, to say the least. Another example is Bhakti Tirtha Swami. His body was full of cancer and causing so much pain. And he was famously quoted as saying, "It doesn't get any better than this." Why would someone say such a thing when their body is just full of cancer and they're in a lot of pain? Because he got the realization that he was getting a lot of reciprocation from Krishna. In many ways, one of the ways is that he was getting more and more empowered to do outreach because people's hearts were opening up to him in his suffering condition. But at the same time, he wasn't really suffering. So that's because his consciousness isn't focused so much on his body. Another example, Jayapataka Maharaj, he's still with us. So many health crises and challenges. And he was asked fairly recently how he can continue despite all of these impediments and obstacles that he faces from the body. And he basically said that Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission is just too ecstatic. He doesn't want to go anywhere. He just wants to, keep being involved and participating because it's just too ecstatic. So that's another example. If our consciousness is absorbed in the right place, then even though our body may be causing so many miseries, we're not suffering from them. And then one final example, this is a smaller example, but it illustrates the point as well. Devanamrita Maharaj, he recently, maybe a year or so ago, maybe it was 2 years ago, he had a foot injury and it was causing a lot of issues and he was trying to get it sorted. But the whole time he had it, he just carried on with his service. He didn't stop. And when finally, he saw different people about it, but one particular person he saw about it, he said to him that a normal person would be in a lot of pain right now with what you've got. And, Mirage is just like sitting there like there's no issue, there's an issue obviously, but it's not really affecting him. It's like foot issues down there. I'm up here. I'm, focused on my mission for Krishna. So the doctor said that not for a normal person, they would be in a lot of pain right now. You've got a very, very high pain threshold, very impressive ability to tolerate pain. So this is what we can look forward to if we're not absorbed in the body. And this for me has to be one of the most inspiring things about Krishna consciousness. All the people that I've mentioned here, They're all senior Vaishnavas in our movement. Obviously, Srila Prabhupada and Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj have passed on to carry on their service elsewhere. But the point is that at that point in their life, they're all, reasonably advanced in age, in their 50s, 60s, 70s plus. So Prabhupada, 81. So even though he may be in a very old body, which may naturally come with its own miseries, if we're not absorbed in it, then there's not such an issue. Whereas recently, my dad, he's not in such good health, and he's still going, but he's a bit younger. He's 67. But just comparing him, because he's not Krishna conscious, unfortunately, to these other seniors in the ISKCON society, basically, to put it simply, I'm much more inspired by the devotees than my father. Not that I don't love my father and I appreciate what he's done for me, and he's still very kind, and I have a very good relationship with him. But I do not want to be an agnostic. I can put it simply that way. He doesn't say God doesn't exist, and he doesn't say that he does. He's just like on the fence about it. And after he had a recent health crisis, I thought that might shake him up a bit, which it did. And I thought that maybe he'd become a bit more inquisitive, but unfortunately, it doesn't seem the case. As Prabhupada often mentions, this is sometimes disadvantage of being old and spiritual life. In old age, it can be very difficult to take to spiritual life. It doesn't have to be, but often that can be the case. People become, as they say, quote unquote, fossilized. If they find it hard to change their frame of thinking. So my dad's still alive. He's gone through one health crisis. Maybe he'll go through another. Krishna is giving him a second chance, and the second one, okay, maybe I do need to surrender to God, but we'll see what happens. Watch the space. So we can basically ask ourselves, what do I want to do with my life? How do I want to end up? Where do I want to go? Who do I want to be like? So we can just look at so many people in this material world and how not so happy they are. Like there was one example, I can't remember the guy's name, but basically is the richest man in the world at that point in time. I can't remember how many years ago this interview was done. It wasn't that long ago. And he was asked, what are you thinking right now? You're the richest man in the world. What are you thinking? And he just looked at the camera and he said, more. So obviously he's not fully happy. He's just thinking about what he doesn't have. And then there was another example of they asked the second richest man in the world some questions. There was an interview with him, and they asked him about the person who was richer than him. And as soon as he heard that person's name, he just became super envious. And just so like, why are you talking about that guy? I hate that guy. So like, this is the thing about the material world. You can be the second richest person on the planet Earth, and you hear about the person who's richer than you, and immediately you become miserable. So this is the material world. It's not a nice place. So I'll finish there. I've said enough. Obviously, we know the solution is to become Krishna conscious, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Anything they'd like to share?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Thank you very much for enlightening the text with a very sweet and small text with a, with a with a short point mentioning the importance of how this the burden, though carried from head to shoulder, doesn't solve the problem. And you've given so nice example of how this shouldering the problem from one side to another doesn't solve the problem at all. The material problem will remain as it is. It is only changes the place, but it remains with us. And we can see how Prabhupada has given the examples of, as you said, how the horse has been replaced by the motor car. The problem is still there. Not even still there, it is multiplied.
Yeah.
Yeah, it causes so many after effect, but we don't realize. We just short-sightedly see that the problem is minimized. But if we analyze the fact, it is actually serious one. So you can see how the pollution in the air is increased by the invention of cars.
mm,
Has it really helped the nature? No. So for all these examples, we can conclude that no matter how much change you make for your um satisfaction, but it is going to add more and more problem to the nature and to the people of the universe. So it is better to have relied upon the Lord. Lord will provide everything. As you have given examples of Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and Jai Pataka Maharaj, see how they are serving the Lord even at the stage, at the end, fag end of their life, having so much trouble of their body, but being Krishna conscious fully in their determination, things have changed. They don't feel the miseries they are having side by side. And if you see this, our um Parikshit Maharaj, when he was given a call for 7 days life only, he was so much engrossed in hearing the Bhagavatam from
mm.
Shukdev Goswami. He forgot everything to have food, water, everything. So, by the mercy of the Lord, everything can be managed. So, the reliance on Lord, reliance on Krishna will sort out every problem. By our own effort, if we endeavor to make something, to make a change in our life, that is going to bring more problem for others and for us also. And that is the message Srila Prabhupada wants to give us. No matter what you try to change the situation, it is not going to help. And you also gave the example of medicine, how the indigestion, taking a pill to sort out the indigestion creates more problem in your body. You
Mm.
realize afterwards only. So it is better to get more dependence on the Lord to sort out the problem by ourselves rather than let the Lord take care of us. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your comments, Prabhu, and thanks for reminding me of that example of the medicine.
Yeah.
Because I didn't realize that saying it, Krishna, I guess, must have inspired it because actually that's what happened to me now that I'm thinking about it. Just recently, like I had this big, massive rash. Basically, yeah, my digestion isn't so good, and so I'd
Mm,
taken this particular medicine, and yeah, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just had this rash all over my body, and I was itching, and I was like,
mm.
"What the hell is that?" And then it was that medicine. So, yeah, so I've got personal, practical realization.
So you took another medicine to reduce the rash.
I'm still taking it. Unfortunately, I'm gonna do the course because someone recommended I take it, but I'm just gonna take a
Yeah,
reduced
yeah,
dosage and see what happens.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else have anything they'd like to share or ask?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for the very nice class, particularly bringing out the point that, and you have told that when one of the problem we try to solve in this material world, maybe that problem is solved temporarily, but
Mm,
another problem is created automatically.
mm,
That is the nature of the material nature, because it is all a duality. As Prabhupada has told, just as even we did not ask for the misery, misery came, but similarly, because it is a relative world, the misery will go and happiness will also come automatically. I mean, from that. And
mm,
if we try to solve that in that way, we take ourselves the ownership and try to solve it, will create more problems, as you have rightly told. And I just remember one very small example they told one, maybe 30, 35 years ago when I was in India at the time. And I was trying to construct a house in India at the time. And one of my colleagues, I mean, he was not that Krishna conscious that way, but in India, the Vedic knowledge is almost ingrained in the society also. And when I was trying to purchase some of the items for my house, he told, in another way, he told Prabhu, what happens, you are trying to do the costly things here, thinking that it will be very nice for you, but the moment it will turn bad, you will repent for that. Because And the replacement will be, to replace that beautiful thing will need more money, and you will be in more trouble at the time. I mean, in other words, whenever doing the similar way, whatever thing, beautiful thing or opulent thing you try to get, you may get it by the grace of the initially, but even to maintain it is even harder problem. And we do not think it. Even when I came to New Zealand, another example I'm telling, at the time I did not have any car or anything. I was going on the public transport, and I was thinking to buy a car. And one of my friends also told the same thing. You are thinking by buying a car, you will solve this problem, but you will create another problem. You have to maintain it, you have to pay for the registration, other things where the car goes off. So many problems. But you are going in the public transport, you are thinking, I do not have enough freedom. But the other way, your freedom, some freedom you may get, but at the cost of some other pains.
Right.
That is the nature of the material world. But unfortunately in this material world, all the educational system and everything we learn doesn't direct us to the right solution. That the material world has been created by the Lord for a temporary period. Dukhalayam ashashvatam. It is a suffering place, but at the same time it is temporary. Our job is to make best use of that opportunity and go back to the Godhead. That is our target, or that is our real goal. And that's why Prahlad Maharaj has told Motirna Krishna. But that is not our Motirna Krishna, Shoto Porotova. I think Motirna Shoto Porotova. Mitho Pipoded Griha Pratanam, Adanto Govir Vishantam Tamisram, Puno Chorbito Chorbanam. That means we try to do the same thing repeatedly, thinking that we will be happy. But it's a foolish attempt. We can never be happy that way. When we comes to that knowledge, and that moment, the importance of Krishna consciousness really comes to our life. And when we fed up, Prabhupada is told, unless you are fed up with the material things, our journey to Krishna consciousness cannot be perfect. So much, whenever we have attachment to the material world, we are getting behind. But when you understand that it will not give us peaceful happiness in the real sense, and the Krishna is the Okilora Shamrita Shindu, he is the source of this. If we have to have happiness, real happiness, we have to go that way. And the material happiness will never give us happiness for a soul which is transcendental in nature. So when we realize it, that is the stage of our pursuing Krishna consciousness becomes successful. And the more we understand that material world is a place only to uplift that, we can make best use of our human life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much for sharing as well. Should we end there? Is that time up, I guess?
Yeah, Prabhuji, it appears there's no other person. So yes, thank you.
Cool. Right.
Vancha kalpatariyasya Anantapadi Vaishnav ki jai.
His Grace Gadai Gauranga Prabhu ki
Prabhu ki
jai.
jai.
Srila
Ki
Prabhupada
jai.
ki
Guru
jai.
Premanande
Gaur
Hari
Premanande
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Hari Bol. All glories to the
Grace
assembled
assembled
devotees.
devotees.
Hare Krishna.